Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Colors on the Inside. Hey Bryan, my special selection request is going to be Search Party by So Many Dynamos. They're a math popish band out of St. Louis and they know how to rip. Cheers! So, let's dive into this. This sounds like a fun time. Let's see what's going on with So Many Dynamos.
There will be no search party for us. No black ribbons tied on antennas. No one's going to stop traffic for us.
Really interesting harmony on our melody. Really beautiful guitar work. There's so much going on. That was a song. Bye, everyone. Geez, I don't know that I'm gonna have much to say to elevate it. I'm gonna do what I can for an analysis, but oh, my grasp on this is thin. Okay, the guitar work in here is the math part. It is frequently two to three guitars, maybe only two. I don't know. My gut says three, and I remember three at a point, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's three people playing. There's just mostly through this track, it is one note at a time, and there was a couple of moments when you have three notes, but you can use multi-finger tapping to achieve that as well. So, anyways, there's multiple guitar lines going on, whether they're coming from individual instruments or not, and they are just all over the place, constantly moving, interesting harmonic direction, usually taking influence from jazzier ideas. It's very math rock in that regard. We hear a lot of this in more modern post-hardcore as well. Just the complete separation of two guitar parts filling out our left and right side and just doing their own thing, kind of complementing each other, but for the most part existing in their own world. And that drives a majority of the complexity throughout this track. Um, but it's all done with a production that feels very anemic. It is exceptionally light. The guitars are tinny and sort of piercing. I don't want to put too much weight on the production here, but it is very difficult for me to ignore what the guitars are doing. They cut through all of the noise. They're not given enough bass to keep them rooted in their area. They want to be heard regardless of what anybody else is doing, and they kind of float into everybody else's stuff. The bass is jumping between more moving parts that complement what the guitars are doing and kind of just holding down the fort, doing some not necessarily pedal tone stuff. I don't think there was any moment when I heard the bass just playing one note, but sticking with more harmonic structure, maybe more like a moving bass line, something to keep the song pushing forward, but holding the song down and providing some sort of stability to everything that's happening above it. The drums primarily act as a metronome, but they're it's a metronome with a lot of flavor to it, a lot of character. There's a lot of fun little ornamental runs all over the place that the drummer just throws in that once again just adds to more complexity going on here. This is just the layering component, where each of the instrument's roles are and their placement in the production. It's already a fairly claustrophobic foundation for the vocals to sit on top of, and the minute the vocals come in, they're in a very strange key. It's not out of tune with the guitars. It's just not where we would traditionally hear the melody to be in the chords that the guitars are laying down. And part of it is that, like with a lot of rock and metal, we tend to stick with writing music based around five notes, five note keys, rather than jazz, which is like seven plus, and classical, which is seven. And so those two extra notes that we don't really classify can be natural, sharp, or flat. And depending on what combination we choose for the two omitted notes is where we're going to get the flavor that the vocals bring. Um, it's why metal can kind of shift from being that metal sound to something that feels a bit more classical, to something that feels a bit more bluesy without ever really losing that core feeling. It's just kind of like, oh, we've kind of switched something. This frequently happens when we move from a verse chorus section to a solo, and we might simplify some of the components so that the solo can play over it, or maybe we complicate it so the solo has an expanded range to play within. Um, and so what we're getting here is the guitars laying down a pretty typical pentatonic idea, and then the vocals just working outside of the norm that we would typically hear with, especially with the style that we hear. There is a Midwest emo indie rock thing going on here with the production and with the vocal delivery, and they're definitely not going in that direction for their melodic harmony. It it tugs at me a little bit. I don't want to say that it's tension. I don't want to say that it is friction. It's just not, even by the end of the song, when I should have acclimated to it, is not where my brain wants to go when I hear what the rest of the band is doing. And so it does create a bit of tension for me as a listener, but I'm not going to say that that's an intrinsic component of the song itself. But if you were listening to this and you're like, I like this on paper, but it's kind of bouncing off of me. That's probably what it was. There's a lot of stuff in here that keys into pretty typical math rock, indie rock sensibilities, and then the vocalist decides to go a little avant garde uh, with their note choice. Eventually, though, we also add another layer of vocals, harmonized at first, but eventually splitting off into its own thing and kind of doing a guitar bit where we have two separate lines doing completely different things. This was a short-lived section, but I just want to point that out that we had four lead instruments at one time all doing their own thing, while the bass and the drums tried as hard as they could to keep the song from floating into the stratosphere. They had to keep it grounded. It's just a bonkers moment. The song continued to expand in all sorts of different directions. We eventually brought in brass, and at first they kind of fit, but quickly ballooned into a smorgasbord of totally isolated ideas that were all played together, like a flurry of those two guitar bits, all stacked on top of each other. It quickly goes bonkers. And then eventually we also add in some harsher vocals. They were not full on screams, but definitely putting a bit of compression on the clean vocals. Just adding extra bite and maybe even a little bit of tension to the track. Uh, and honestly, that's kind of the best read I have on it, is to sort of explain how they created all of this. I will say, though, that for all of the chaos here, which I'm going to chalk up mostly to a first time listen, it is a lot of disparate parts slammed together, but I'm sure it begins to make more sense once you can kind of anticipate a lot of it. I mean, that goes with a lot of more difficult to listen to music, because the more you listen to it, the easier it gets to listen to. But it's just something that is very chaotic on a first listen, and there's a lot of moving parts, most of which aren't working together in a way to amplify each other's sound. It's a bunch of people arguing over each other. And I don't know what that means. I mean, I know what it means, but I'm not sure what direction they wanted to take it. Maybe that's just what it is. Maybe when we get into the lyrics, it's about an argument, a bar fight or something, and I think they do a great job of showcasing that concept in the music. I will say, though, there is something here that pulls me to listen to more. Whenever I listen to music, whether it's something that people show me on Discord or in the comment section, or it's something we check out for one of these big reactions, or the more casual reactions during the live stream, if it interests me, I pull it off to the side, and later on, usually twice a week or so, I guess, I add all of them to my personal listening spreadsheet. Unlike every other spreadsheet I talk about. This one is personal, is not out there on the net. I've been tempted to put it out there, but I don't. And it encapsulates everything that I've listened to in my whole life, as much as I can remember, since I only started it a couple of years ago, and everything I want to listen to. I add things to it. This this is in the list of things to get added to the spreadsheet. And I don't know why. There's something in here and I can't express what it is that I enjoyed. Despite on paper this being something that's most likely not up my alley, maybe it is that little bit of Midwest emo. Just enough to get my foot in the door. Um, Maybe it was just a hint of rasp that we got at the end. A little tease for maybe more of a post-hardcore side of the band. I don't know that I would end up listening to the album and enjoying it, but I do know I want to listen to more. And with this album only being 38 minutes long, it would be a really easy listen to get through, even if everything was at this level, doing something similar. I'm going to hit some lyrics. Maybe that'll help change my perspective on things. This, so far, though, is just some really noisy indie rock. This is a song about some sort of catastrophic event that affects the entire world. It kicks off and states that there's going to be a loss of life, but also a loss of society. There will be people missing, but there will be no search party for us, no black ribbons tied on antennas. No one's going to stop traffic for us. When we're gone, we're gone. You know, it's as simple as that. It talks about the chaos and the disbelievement. That's not a word, but the people who are in complete lack of believing that this is what's going to happen. Um, and we have the people who say, I told you so. It's just a series of stuff that, unfortunately, all too familiar with these days. But there's some people who believe it and are living their lives like it's their last day. There's people begging for their life. He says, but you know what? We get what we deserve. And then there's a section that says, I can't believe this is happening. Some people are saying, I knew I wouldn't die before you. Others are saying, I can't believe I'm the last one standing. And it's just a bunch of, oh, disbelief is the word I want. Man. And then the final one is when it's all over. And people are like, I told you so. I hate to say it, but I told you this would happen. It says, everybody get your flashlights, everybody get your guns. Come tomorrow, if we still exist, we'll be singing with the frogs and dancing with the locusts, going back to our roots of nature. Society's done. It's crumbled. We're not going back to that. It says, oh God, the sky is falling. The world was all for nothing, and we're standing for an encore. That's how the song ends. And sadly, that seems accurate. When the world is destroyed, or at least humanity is wiped out from existence, the few that are left may be rejoicing, hoping that maybe the next group of humans, the next life form that crops up and decides to do what we did, will also meet a similar demise. It is a song about a lot of noise. It's about a lot of competing perspectives. It's about arguing when there is no argument to be made. That action needs to be taken to avoid a situation, and Some people argue that the action isn't necessary. It is a song about frustration. It is a song about being right but not wanting to be right, and the frustration that comes from even that. It's the chaos of people living their life like it's the last day. It says empty promises, storefront windows begging for their lives. The chaos of the downfall of structured life. The music makes sense against this backdrop. I don't know that there's any specific point in the song that I think best encapsulates what's going on here. I don't even necessarily know that as the song progresses and gets more chaotic, that it is lining up with what the lyrics are doing, but just carries an overall vibe that matches well with the concept they're exploring lyrically. And unfortunately, I have to end it there. I don't have any other read on this, but if nothing else, I'm curious. Be digging more into this. So, those are my thoughts on So Many Dynamos Search Party. But let me know yours. Put your perspectives, opinions, comments, anything down there in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, there's a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.